You are approaching Saturn.
We are 5 years away from entering the 21st century. But are you ready for the future?
Introducing Sega Saturn. Sega's next-generation gaming platform, revolutionary sports and arcade gameplay, all with amazing new 3D experiences never before possible on home game systems. Wow.
Advertising in the games industry has undergone a lot of changes over the years. In fact, back in the 80s and 90s, there was a pretty big emphasis on trying to look as exciting as possible at all times, and sometimes this was a detriment to the products they were trying to advertise.
It's the Legend of Zelda and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad. Octoroks, Tektites, levers too. But with your help, our hero pulls through.
Then, as games got cooler, so did the attempts at selling them. This led to some surprisingly weird and downright unsettling TV broadcasts.
Dad, was that your commercial?
I don't know.
There's even been a fair share of incredibly controversial adverts for video games, including some that were actually banned.
Imagine the place you felt safest, warmest, the most loved. That place doesn't exist anymore.
Are you sure about that?
But the adverts that have been catching my eye recently are those of the big red N. See, Nintendo adverts as of late have a very specific tone and mood to them that I think is kind of genius, and I wanted to talk about why. Which means we have to take a look back at some other Nintendo ads.
Mario and Peach together. Me and Gina together.
Oh, before that, how's this for an ad? For the low price of nothing, you can hit that big subscribe button. Doesn't that feel good? Don't do it again though. That'll unsubscribe you, and that does not feel good. That feels bad. Nintendo have been around since the dawn of home console entertainment, and as such have gone through a massive range of adverts in their time. And whilst the early ones were
"We are Nintendo Ultimate TV Game System. We challenge all players. You cannot beat us,"
memorable, there was no era quite as divisive as the Wii U era.
Yeah, look like I've been upgraded.
The Wii U was a strange moment in Nintendo history. The Wii had sold like hotcakes laced with crack and was a huge hit with not just gamers but families too. This was in many ways the first console to really sell the idea that you didn't have to be a smelly nerd to enjoy games. This console encourages you to get up and move. It was for active people, old people, young children. You didn't have to spend hours learning button combinations to be good at it. It was as easy as picking up the remote and mimicking the actions you wanted your Mii to perform. You want to play tennis? You just swing it. Bowling? Just swing it. Golf? Just swing it. Win the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games as an anthropomorphic crocodile DJ? Just swing it. And the Wii came fresh off the trail of the Nintendo DS, which also came with an equally as well-loved gimmick: the touchscreen and stylus controls, as well as the dual screens. A genius move, which had allowed the typically smaller screen size that handheld consoles came with to move things like HUD elements and maps to the DS's other screen, allowing for much more space where the gameplay was happening. So, when Nintendo needed to follow up the Wii with its next home console, they were under a lot of pressure, especially since the 3DS had suffered a fairly disappointing launch. So Nintendo seemingly took the Wii, kept that branding and the motion control compatibility, and found a way to incorporate the dual screen and touch controls of the DS to home console gaming with the Wii U gamepad. A combination of two successful consoles should be a perfect recipe for success, right? Well, no, actually, the Wii U was a pretty drastic failure. And honestly, this was for more than a few reasons, but I'm going to be focusing on what I consider to be the main one, which was the console's lack of focus and the confused marketing that resulted in. See, as I mentioned earlier, Nintendo sort of opened the floodgates with the Wii. It introduced gaming to an entirely new audience of people. There was those using it as a way to get fit, music lovers using it to dance, and partygoers using it as a social tool. Nintendo wanted to keep this market, and this created a few problems. The marketing for the Wii U was child-friendly to a fault, which in my opinion was to account for the much broader and casual audience that Nintendo had amassed. What Nintendo failed to realize, however, was two things. The first being that these same new gamers, the casual ones who Nintendo were investing in so heavily, were not as willing to part with their cash as much as dedicated gamers were. If you were only into the Wii for the active element it provided, your Wii Fit was still doing the job, and that U was not worth the pricey $350 upgrade, and that's without the games you'd have to buy as well. And unlike Nintendo, Ubisoft noticed this. It's why they continued to release Just Dance on the Wii up until 2020. The Switch was 3 years old at this point, but they knew the partygoers who were only ever breaking out their games console when they had friends around for a drink were not going to be shelling out cash for a new console when the Wii still works. And I guess in an attempt to include everyone, Nintendo made their ads just these most bland, cheesy, overly safe family fun promos ever.
Being bad has never felt this good.
Which brings me to thing number 2 that Nintendo totally missed. Gaming was going through a bit of an audience shift in 2012. Don't get me wrong, there was always adults who played and enjoyed games, and plenty of mature titles available prior to 2012, but if we imagine that kids who grew up with those more mature games like Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid and shooters like Halo and Call of Duty in the sort of PS2 360 era, those same kids were now growing up by the time the Wii U came around. You're starting to see your first generation of adults who grew up with more mature and more cinematic gameplay experiences, and they're all in a position where they can now invest in a console with their own money. I mean, the PS4, it was cool. It marketed itself as a sleek gaming machine where you could play Black Flag, Infamous, Battlefield 4, and whether you liked any of those games or not, at the time, it told the general audience that this was the console for a more mature crowd, and that was sort of the audience to be appealing to at the time. Nintendo didn't have those games, and that left them in a tricky spot. Their catalog is very family friendly, and because with the Wii U especially they chose to focus so hard on casual content, they had, I would argue, their most childish lineup of all time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the Wii U has a fantastic set of games. 3D World, Tropical Freeze, Mario Maker, Yoshi's Woolly World, Mario Kart 8, Pikmin 3. These are some of my favorite games of all time, but are you kind of seeing the problem? There was a lot of Mario or Mario adjacent content on the Wii U, and that meant if you weren't huge on colourful platformers, you could probably play your favourite games on another console in higher quality. There was no Metroid, no F-Zero, no new Zelda content until the Switch was already out, so any Nintendo franchise with the ability to be a little more grown up was just totally left out. So how do you market your console as cool and adult when Mario is the only thing you've got to sell on it? Well, at the time, they clearly couldn't. The game's library itself had some flaws, sure, and the console itself was underpowered, but I truly do believe the marketing is what really sunk the Wii U, because you can make even the most kid-friendly games appealing to adults.
Sounds like a lot of...
And Nintendo finally figured that out with the Switch. See, even from its launch, the Switch was advertised with much more decorum than the Wii U. The console's portability was highlighted as ideal for commuters, people traveling alone on flights, or cool hip roof parties where you play Mario Odyssey for some reason. There was less focus on memes and family-friendly vibes, and more focus on how the Switch could fit into your life, which was the console's core strength. This was a really good start, but the cadence they later hit was, and still is, peak marketing in my opinion. If you're from old Britannia like us, you've probably seen or heard of the John Lewis Christmas adverts. And for those of you that haven't, John Lewis is a department store that puts out an advert every Christmas that has nothing to do with the store, and is instead just a sort of high-budget feeling short film that is designed to be cute, emotive, slightly sad, and ultimately heartwarming. So that white mums everywhere go, "Oh my god, have you seen the John Lewis ad this year?" And then suddenly everyone has John Lewis on the mind. Well, Nintendo has tapped into their inner John Lewis and started pushing a similar strategy with their games. Only their white mum is a 90s/2000s kid who is now a young adult and realizing how much it fucking sucks to work and be a grown-up. So they released this Tears of the Kingdom commercial. And this is the perfect Nintendo ad in my opinion. Kids are going to want your game anyway. They see the bright colors, funny characters, and that's enough for them. You should be aiming your ads at the fed-up adults desperate to remember what it's like to be a kid. And this ad does exactly that. There's the monotony of work and travel emphasized by the grey color scheme, the rainy weather. The dude is so clearly not loving his job, but that horrible commute is made so much more enjoyable by getting lost in the world of Hyrule. A sprawling landscape filled with color and beauty, a world of discovery that feels as big now as Ocarina of Time probably did to this dude back in 1998. And when he gets home to his modern, empty, very plain looking house, the only warmth emanates from the TV screen, where once again, he can escape the blandness of reality. Is it slightly bleak? Yes. Is it upsetting? Yeah, kinda, but damn does it make me want to drop doing work and play Tears of the Kingdom instead. It makes you miss childhood. It makes you miss the limitless imagination and journeys you used to have. It encourages you to rediscover your sense of adventure.
He said it! He said it!
This game can do that for you, so you should buy it. Another one that I really like, and the one that finally prompted me to make this video, is Sisters. This one is pretty special to me because I think it sort of takes the sentiment that the Wii U ads were trying to do and does them in a much better way. Here we have a younger sister who's upset that her older sister is growing up without her. She has less time for her and it's incredibly sad to watch, so she finds solace in playing Mario. We have the little flowers telling her that they believe in her, we watch as she's amazed by the elephant power-up, and eventually it acts as a way for her to reconnect with her sister. And this is a cute little story on its own, but the really clever thing about this to me is that even though this is a story about two sisters, it's mainly told from the perspective of the mother. She sees them not getting on, she sees the youngest struggling to adjust, and so she suggests Mario.
Why don't you play some Mario?
She watches in peace as the two bond over it, and eventually her and her mum join in, resulting in this very warm and moving celebration of togetherness and family. It's still an ad, so it's still a little cheesy, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't move me a little. And having this all happen through the parental eyes immediately shifts your perspective of the game. See, one of my most core memories is actually playing Mario with my younger sister. All the way from Super Mario All-Stars when we were little, to the new Super Mario Bros. Games when she got a little older and could actually control a character properly, and finally me co-starring her as she finished her first full solo run of a game, being Super Mario Galaxy. I was so proud of her, and she was so proud of herself. Mario as a franchise is instrumental to my relationship with my sister growing up, and I'm willing to bet a lot of siblings had similar experiences with Nintendo games. So when I watch this commercial, I'm actually not relating to the kids at all, really. I feel instead like an adult who's passing on this great feeling of joy I once felt with my own sister to a younger generation. I am, like the mum, experiencing all over again just how much power games have to bring families together, and wishing I could once again sit with my family and bond over these games like we used to. But wait, here comes the mum and the grandma, and they're joining in. Mario Wonder is a product that can do that for you this holiday. That's what this advert tells you. You can reclaim the family bonding moments that, until now, you felt you just didn't have time for anymore. And that is what makes a good Nintendo ad. That is how you sell a family-friendly product like Mario to adults. Emotion and nostalgia.
We used to play Mario when your mum was little.
How Pixar have been doing this for years. This whole ad campaign is basically just the ending of Toy Story 3. Anyway, I've rambled for long enough. Please let me know some of your fondest childhood gaming memories in the comments down below. And hey, ask your loved ones if they want to play some Mario with you this holiday season. They might surprise you.